So we have a question already from Zelkanine. What is the benefit of reading, listening, hearing, sounds, podcasts, books, English speaking? I'm not really sure what you're asking me, Zelkarine. It does look like you could use some grammar help, but I definitely see what is the benefit of reading. I can tell you right away, the benefit of reading is it's part of language learning. To learn English, which is a very irregular language with lots of different spellings and different grammar structures, you really have to see it. And the way to see it is to read. And as a native speaker, this is how we learn. We read a lot when we're kids. Okay, well, this is a good question we'll get to. I have a couple questions from last week we need to address first. Yep, I think you're right, Sleepwalker. I think already we have more people joining us than usual. I saw someone, we have Letty with us. Letty from Mexico. Welcome to the show, thank you. Facebook user says, very impressive, thank you. Facebook user, I'd love to know your name and what country you're watching from. Okay guys, I'm going to clear this off and start to answer some questions here. Jonas says, I'm grateful for your answers you gave about grammar mysteries I had. Yeah, well, that's what we're here for. This show is to solve your mysteries. Okay, going to get my hat off. It's a little cooler without it. And I'm going to start answering some of the questions we have. Now, I want to go back 1 week to a question we had last time. So if you'll just bear with me while I call it up. Okay, so my friend Wilson, a teacher in Ecuador, Wilson, who joins our show quite often, says, which of these is correct? Well, Wilson, they are both correct. All right, I ran all of these errands. Okay, that one's grammatically correct. And this one here, I did these errands. They're both correct. So what next? Which one should you use? This is always the question with English. If something is grammatical and something else is grammatical, why do people use both if they seem similar? Well, I have a theory that anything that is similar but slightly different, it is different. And this is one of those cases. Now, grammatically, they're both fine, okay? So they're both correct. But correctness isn't always what we're after. We want to understand the meaning that's being expressed because that is the function of grammar. Grammar is the structure that lets us communicate a specific idea. It's the architecture. Think of a bridge, right? A bridge is a design. It's an engineering design, right? And the bridge is different design than an office tower, right? An office tower might look like this, you know, entrance here, and office is up here. A bridge might look like this, right? Suspension bridge, and you have cars on it. Each design is very different, right? This has a lot of steel cables. It goes across the ocean or the river. This is in a city with a tower and many levels, right? And you have offices up here. Each design allows different things to happen. This design allows people to go up in here with an elevator, sit at a desk and work. In fact, you can fit hundreds, thousands of people in an office tower. That's the purpose. The purpose of this architecture is very different. The purpose of a bridge isn't to store a lot of people so they can do work at their desk. The purpose of a bridge is to get cars and people across from one part of land to another. Different architecture, different purpose. So these architectures, structures, allow different things to happen. English grammar, all grammar, is the same. Different grammars allow different things to happen, different meanings to be expressed. Okay, so let's talk about Wilson's question here. They're both correct grammatically, so what meanings are they expressing? Well, let's talk about the simple one first. I did these errands. Yeah, I did these errands. Okay, and then you might explain what the errands were. What does that tell us? What does that communicate? Well, it's past tense, did, Errands are like little chores that usually you have to travel for, like going to the store or going to the market. I did these errands. So all we know is that this happened in the past. In the past, Wilson did these errands. And maybe he'll explain what the errands are. He did them. He started them, he did them, and they ended. That's what we know. That's all you're expressing. I did these errands. Great. So think about a child or a teenager who has chores around the home. Your father or mother might say, did you do your chores? Yes, I did my chores. They are finished. That's what you communicate. The fact that the errands are done. I did them. So what does this one communicate? Well, it does also communicate that the errands are complete. We have the past tense verb ran. Okay, ran is another verb you can use for errands. As I said, errands are usually chores or little jobs outside of the home that you have to travel a little bit to go and do. So we can use the verb, I ran some errands, or I ran these errands. It also implies, that verb ran implies that, maybe you worked hard, you traveled a lot, or you walked, or you did it in a hurry. Ran is the past tense of run, so it implies a different kind of movement. Even if it's not entirely true that you ran, right? But there's something else happening here. We have descriptors like all of these. Why would you say that instead of I did these errands? Well, this one, remember, it just tells you that you did them. They're complete. All of these errands. Why would you need to say that? Well, if you're in a conversation, for example, if my wife says, did you do the errands? And I said, yes, I did these errands. And she doubts me. Are you sure? Did you do all of them? I might say, yes, I ran all of these errands. So by adding the word all, you're emphasizing that they're all done, right? Why would you need that? Because maybe the other person doubts you or can't believe you did all of them in that time period. So you emphasize the positive. You could just say, I ran these errands. That's a positive statement. But sometimes you want to add another positive meaning to emphasize that they are truly done. Okay, why? Because someone doubts you, right? I ran all of these errands. This also tells, by emphasizing all, we also might imply that it's surprising that you ran all of these errands. Like, you did them all? Incredible. You were gone for 1 hour and you did all of them? Yeah, I ran all these errands in 1 hour. Right? So it's an achievement emphasis. So that's the difference, Wilson. They communicate different ideas. Remember, different grammar structures, different ideas get expressed. Different architecture of buildings, different things can happen. Grammar is the same. Different grammar structures express different meanings. And that's why grammar is important. We don't just want one simple grammar to express this idea. We want to have some nuance, some slightly different meanings. Okay? I'm just going to clear the board and get ready for the next question, because I'm going to have to write a sentence on the board. So, and I will, after that, I will scroll down and check your questions that you're giving me now, and we'll get to those. So the other question I had last week was this one. Not really a question, it's a request. Teacher, please explain unless. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I've prepared a little chart. We're going to talk about what kind of word unless is, so what function it serves grammatically. And we'll also talk about what it means. Remember, unless is a word, like any other word. And if you don't know the meaning of a word, the first place you should look to understand that, the first place you should investigate is the dictionary. Okay, so let's look up the dictionary meaning of unless. Oops. So, dictionaries are great. They tell us several things. First thing we see here is it tells us what word part of speech it is, what word form. And unless is a conjunction or a subordinating adverb. Now, why does it have two types? Well, it depends what it's doing in the sentence, right? Conjunctions join two sentences together. Subordinating adverbs also join two sentences together, but one of them will be a dependent clause, one of them will be an independent clause. And we'll talk about that in a second. So what's the meaning of the word? Well, it's used to introduce the case in which a statement being made is not true. And here's an example. You can't buy a Ferrari. I can't? What if I want to? No, you can't buy a Ferrari unless you've got a lot of money, because Ferraris are an expensive car. Okay? You can't buy a Ferrari unless you've got a lot of money. If you have $100, you can't buy a Ferrari. So what's happening here is there's a statement of negative statement. You can't or cannot buy a Ferrari. But is that true for all cases? No. There is one case where it's true that you can buy a Ferrari, and that's when you've got a lot of money. So unless is connecting the case or the condition with which the negative statement becomes true. Right? You can't buy a Ferrari. That's a negative statement. You can buy a Ferrari. We want to change that meaning. Right? Unless helps us do that. It introduces the case or the condition in which the statement being made is not true or valid. So you can't buy a Ferrari. When's that not true? Well, it's not true if you've got a lot of money, right? So unless, like if, introduces a new condition or case. Look at the other example. She won't pass the exam. 100% of the time? No, she won't pass the exam unless one condition is true, which is she studies for it. Right? She won't pass the exam unless she studies for it. Okay, let's look closely at one of these examples. I'll just write it up on the board. She won't pass the exam unless she studies for it. Hopefully you can see that whole sentence. Okay, so let's clear this off. She won't pass the exam unless she studies for it. Let's identify the parts. Let's investigate this sentence. Little sentence forensics. Okay, she won't pass. Well, what we have here is the subject. We have a negative. We have a modal. Right? Basically, it's will not. Pass is the verb, and the object is exam. Over here, we have another clause. Subject, verbs, and then we have the complement over there. So we have two sentences here, and they're connected or conjoined by this conjunction. Now, this belongs to this sentence. But this is not an independent clause. And here's a little test to determine if an independent clause is independent or dependent. Imagine you walk up to someone at the bus stop, a stranger, and you just say this. Excuse me, unless she studies it. Will that person understand your idea? Excuse me, sir, unless she studies it. No, they're going to look at you and go, you're crazy, what are you saying? It doesn't have a complete meaning. It's not a complete idea. Try this one. Excuse me, sir, at the bus stop. She won't pass the exam. Maybe you give a name. Sally won't pass the exam. Will they understand you? Yes, they'll understand that because it's a complete idea. Now, what does that mean? That means what we have here is a dependent clause and an independent clause, right? This is dependent because you can't say it alone. It doesn't have a complete meaning. It depends on this one. This one's independent. You can say it by itself and it has a full meaning. So, in this sense, unless is what we call an adverbial Subordinator. It connects the subordinate or dependent clause to the main clause. And it means she won't pass the exam. Certainly won't pass the exam. 100% of the time, Paul? Well, there's one condition. If this happens, this will change. She will pass the exam. Or she'll have a good chance. Let me show you a few more of these words that work the same way, and you'll understand what an adverbial subordinator or a subordinate adverb is. You already know a lot of them. After, although, as, because, before, if, lest, since, though, until, unless, when or whenever, where or wherever, whereas, while. These adverb subordinators all connect the dependent clause to the independent clause, right? I went outside, although it was raining. I went outside because I wanted to go for a walk. I went outside before it rained, right? So these connect the dependent clause and the independent clause, the dependent and the independent clause. So I don't know who asked me that question. I can't recall. Maybe Jonas? Whomever asked this question, I hope that answers it for you. All right. Now there's one more I need to answer here. I'll just clear the board. Give you guys a chance to have a look at that, see what you think. And then we'll take your questions, because this show is for you. And the reason I'm doing this is because last week we ran out of time and I couldn't answer all of these questions. So today the same thing. Please ask your questions, and if I can't get to them today, I'll answer them next week. So this question, what do we call these type of sentences where there's a preposition at the end? Now, first of all, these are questions, right? Who did you go with? Right? Who did you go with? And who are you talking to? Right. So they're questions. And they end on the preposition. Right? Prepositions. And prepositions, as we've talked about in this show many times, prepositions have one job. They connect nouns. And they come before the noun. In fact, the word preposition means pre, before, position, before noun position. They connect nouns to the other words, right? That's why sometimes you see a preposition that often works with a verb, like listen to. But that to, really, its job is to connect to the noun. I listen to music, listen to my parents, listen to the cat, right? You have to connect to a noun. Now, the reason there's no noun here is because we don't know the noun. With what? With who? To what? To where? Who? The reason why we don't have a noun here is because we're asking what the noun is. What's the answer to this question? Who do you go with? Who did you go with? I went with Paul, right? Preposition, noun. Who are you talking to? I'm talking to my viewers, right? Preposition, noun. You guys, I'm talking to my viewers. So the reason why these are at the end is because we're asking what the noun is. Who did you go with? With who? Who are you talking to? To who? Because we don't know the noun, we're asking for it, but it ends with the preposition. That's why we end with the preposition, because we don't know the noun that comes after it. That's the whole nature of the question. Now, I think this was Marta. I'm not sure who asked this question. But the question is, what do we call these? Well, there's a lot of different names in different textbooks, but often you'll see sentence, terminal, sentence, terminal prepositions. Terminal means the end. So sentence terminal prepositions. You might hear something like dangling. This is a little more casual. Dangling prepositions, because they're kind of dangling here without a noun to connect to. They're kind of hanging off the edge of the sentence. I think you'll see both of those most commonly. So whomever asked that question, I hope that's a good enough answer for you. Now, let's look at the next question. And in the meantime, by the way, guys, I will erase this quickly. But remember, you can always watch the recording of this show on YouTube, which I'll post about an hour after the show. So if you're missing something or you want to review something, just go to the YouTube channel, subscribe please, and you will see the recording of the show entirely. And I'll also post some clips and short little segments on other social media platforms like TikTok. There is a TikTok channel now, The Grammar Detective. Let me just put that up here. The Grammar Detective is the name of the channel. It's also the name of the TikTok channel. Find me there. You can find me on Instagram. Another thing, guys, if you're watching this now and you're here, which I hope you are, please share this. Please share this out in your network so more and more of our friends can see the show and I can help them. Okay, so what do we call these types of sentences? Yes, sentence terminal or dangling prepositions. Where is that? Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to go into the chat and just see if I've missed anyone. I'll say hi to anyone joining new. Zelkarnine, what is topic today? What is today's topic? Anything you like. Today's topic is let's investigate grammar mysteries. Okay, Pallavi has a question. The difference between recall, remember, and recognize. Okay, so recognize, let's talk about these separately. And I would encourage you also to check the dictionary, because the dictionary is going to give you the more detailed slight differences. What I can tell you about recall and remember, they're almost entirely the same. Recall might imply that you are bringing something up from your memory. You are bringing it up from the basement of your memory. So maybe it's an old memory, right? I recall walking through the forest when I was 5. So I'm calling that up, right? I'm summoning or calling that memory. So often we use recall to mean that you're remembering something from the distant past. Remember is just the same thing, but in all cases. I remember you asked this question last week. I remember Pallavi lives in India, right? I remember this all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean something in the past. Now, as a synonym, we can usually use them both for the same purpose, right? I recall, Pallavi, that you live in India. I remember, Pallavi, that you live in India. There's not a lot of difference, right? Not a lot of difference. Is there a grammatical difference? For example, they're both verbs, and we know that verbs can be transitive or intransitive. Well, that's a good question. We'd have to check the dictionary. I don't know offhand, but we could test it with a sentence. If it's transitive, it needs an object noun after it. For example, I remember that question. That question is the object. So remember is transitive. But can we say a sentence without the object? Paul, do you remember playing in the forest when you were young? Yes, I remember. We don't need the object. So remember is one of those verbs that can be transitive or intransitive, having an object after it or having nothing after it. How about recall? I recall somebody asking me a question years ago. I recall somebody asking me a question. So the object is the noun phrase, somebody asking me a question. Can we use it intransitively with nothing after it? Paul, do you recall the first day of this show? Yeah, I recall it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, recall is transitive only. And that means we must have an object after it, even if it's a pronoun object like it. So I'm just going to check the Oxford Dictionary here. Well, now it doesn't say whether it's transitive or not. Yes, it does. It is transitive. So that is a big difference, right? Remember can be transitive or intransitive. You can put a noun after it or you don't need a noun after it. Recall is transitive only, so you must have a noun after it. I recall that day. I recall her. I recall saying that. You have to have an object or a noun phrase after it. That's a big difference, okay? Now, recognize. Recognize is not related to memory in the sense of pulling up a memory from your memory banks, but it is related neurologically. Recognizing means you see something and you understand it, or that you recognize it in the sense that it is similar to something you remember. Okay, so it is related to the idea of the brain working on memory, but recognizing means you're connecting a meaning to it, right? So if you meet somebody at a conference, for example, or a meeting, and then a year passes and you don't see them. After a year, when you see them, you have a visual image. You see that person walking down the street, and it connects to your memory, so you recognize them. You maybe attach a name to it or associate the conference you went to. So recognizing it is related to using the memory to attach significance or meaning to something. Memory is just remembering and recalling is just repeating the memory. Recognizing is attaching significance or meaning to it, okay? So there's a little bit of difference. All three involve memory, but recognizing is about attaching meaning to something, right? Okay, I'm just going to go through here, see if I've missed saying hello to anyone. Sir Private Eye, that's funny. Is it difficult for you to open a WhatsApp group for reading only? Well, it's not a question of difficult or easy. Everything's difficult, right, to some degree. The question is, Guy, do you think it's a good idea? Do you want a reading group? Does anybody else want a reading group? If a lot of people want a reading group, I'll consider opening a WhatsApp group. So it's possible. No one has suggested that yet to me, but all things are possible. So let's just see if, okay, so Zelkarnin is asking weekly Zoom meeting. That's finished. That finished 2 years ago, Zelkarnin. Sorry. Yes, the recording is available on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. The YouTube channel is The Grammar Detective. Go there, subscribe. You can see the recordings of over 100 shows, right? You can also watch my web series, which is called English Weirdness, right? This is a long-form series where we investigate the mysteries of English. Okay, you can find all of that on the YouTube channel. So check that out if you haven't subscribed yet. And actually, I'll put a QR code up. And if you scan with your phone this QR code, you can watch all the episodes right there. Okay, it's very convenient. So I'll leave that up for a moment. Okay. We have someone joining us named Zaza. Zaza, what country are you watching from? Great to have you with us. I am eating a superb drinking tea. Well, if it's a drinking tea, Zelkarnin, you're not eating it, you're drinking it. So you should say, I am drinking a superb tea. I am drinking a superb tea, and I'm happy for you. Many people don't find the real connection between grammar and speaking. Professor, please explain how to work grammar for achieving communicating. My greetings from Cuba. Yeah, you're right. I think this is a problem. A lot of people want to, everyone wants to speak English, right? Or whatever language. We want to speak because we want to meet friends and talk to each other. Speaking is the most useful element of a language. Everyone wants to speak. But oftentimes they want to learn to speak only. And maybe they say, oh, teacher, I want to learn to speak like you. Well, I learned to speak by reading and practicing writing. That helped my speaking. When I was a young person, I was pretty shy and I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't talk a lot. I read a lot. And reading put those structures in my mind so that when it was time to speak, I could speak in a good sentence. You know, grammar, as I've said, is the architecture through which we express meaning. Different grammar, different meaning. So if you want to talk with really basic English, you need some basic grammar. But I think all of you out there want better English than basic. You want to sound more natural. You want to be able to communicate at an advanced level, maybe for school, maybe for your professional life, right? And if that's your goal, well, you need to understand grammar. You need to know how to use it. Better than that, you need to know how to control it. Because controlling the grammar allows you to use the different structures. Different structures, different meanings, right? So there's a question in here too. How to work grammar for achieving communicative competence? Well, one way is to watch my show and share with your friends, and you can discuss our topics. That's one way. Another way, of course, is to study grammar or English at a school. But, you know, there are a lot of grammar books out there. If you go to my website, you will find a page where I have a lot of book recommendations, grammar books, learning books, and you can actually buy them right off the website. If you're taking IELTS tests, there is an IELTS book or two there. Lots of books available. So check out my website, hardboiledenglish.com. There are a lot of grammar books. Sometimes I recommend a book here on the show. I don't have anything ready. But, you know, if you're in a country where you can't study English or you can't practice it, you can study by yourself by reading books. And you can ask questions on my show based on what you read. So there is a lot you can do by yourself. And of course, we have the internet now. So there's no reason why you can't get exposure to a lot of English. You can watch English movies, you can watch English series, listen to English teachers. There are a lot of great English teachers on the internet. There are. There are also a lot of bad ones. That takes time to work through. That's cute. Thank you, Guy. Arms and face, yeah. Zelkarnin says he's going to travel to the USA, or I'm coming soon to New York City. Whenever you use a travel verb or a movement verb, you have to move from one place to another. So the verb travel or come, both of those express movements. Every time you use a movement verb, you have to think about using from and to. I walked to school. I walked from home to the mall, right? From and to. So when you use travel to the USA, I'm coming soon to New York City. Okay, here's an interesting question. So maybe we understand that here the word errands mean races or something else? No, sorry, La Joya. Errands mean small tasks, usually involving leaving home. You know, think of some examples like on the weekends, I have to run some errands. For example, I have to go shopping. I have to go to the doctor. I have to pick up some supplies. I have to clean my home studio. These are little errands or little tasks, right? Little chores, little duties. Usually, they involve leaving my home. I have to go out to do them, right? And if I have a long list and a short amount of time, I feel like I'm running. I run to my car, take the car, drive to the store, go to one store, go to another store, go to another store, drive to a different mall. You know, you move around a lot to finish your list of small tasks. So errands involve a lot of movement usually. If you're doing little jobs at home, we can just say tasks or chores, right? Chores. But if you have to leave your home and travel a little bit, like just drive into the city or something, that's called an errand, right? An errand. You know, a small task that you have to travel for. Now the travel can be short, but you still have to leave your home to do it. That's an errand. So the reason we use the verb run is because often if you have a long list of chores to do, a long list of errands, you feel like you're running. You have to move, you have to walk a lot. Even if you drive your car, you're walking from one store to another to do all your errands. Maybe it's just a problem in my country where we have a lot of stores. Yes, I'm running errands these days. Another incidence where you might use this is when your boss at work asks you to do something like deliver a document. So you have to walk across the street from one office to another office, or from your office to the mailbox to deliver or mail a document, right? That's an errand because you had to leave the office, right? This is a great example. I cannot maintain a conversation with a native speaker. All the time? No. Unless to practice what I learned. Yeah, this is the case. If you practice what you learn, then you can have a conversation with a native speaker. Then it becomes positive. I can maintain a conversation. You have to practice, right? Joining us also is Hello Sir. Learn English with Mask Girl. Wow, what a great name for a YouTube channel. Learn English with Mask Girl. Thank you for joining us. What country are you watching from? Wow, fantastic name. Great question, Eunice. So, as we said, unless connects to sentences, the same way conditionals do, right? So this sentence, she will pass the exam if she studies. If she studies, if that happens, if that condition happens, the result will be she'll pass the exam. But remember our example was, she will not pass the exam unless she studies. So that tells us a clue. We use unless with negative main sentences. She will not pass the exam. I will not buy a Ferrari. Right? You cannot buy a Ferrari unless you've got a lot of money. She won't pass the exam unless, right? So it's negative sentence plus unless, right? In fact, if you look closely at the word unless, it has this negative prefix. Un. Un is a negative prefix, like he is unfriendly. He is, what's another one? Unfriendly. Unhappy. She is happy. He is unhappy. Right? So this is a negative prefix. So that tells us something. Unless works with negative sentences. Great question. Great distinction there. This is a great question. Whom did you go with? If we look closely at this sentence, you go, right? You is the subject, go is the verb. What we're missing with that question is the person's name, right? The object. So when you have the object missing, then you say whom. Whom did you go with? Because you is the subject. Okay? But in a question like this, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. You can also say, who did you go with? A lot of people would, right? Teacher Paul asked me, you are to work? Sorry, Zelkarnine, I don't understand what you're asking me. Sorry, my friend. Yes, I got it. Ah, Marta, great. It was your question. I thought so. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. A bit bigger? Yeah, sure. Yeah. One reason I tend to write small, Guy, is because when I start up here, I'm very conscious of the space I have on camera, right? So I'm always worried about filling it up too quickly when I have other things that I'm planning to write. So I apologize. That's a good question. So in general, stative verbs that express states, not actions, don't usually work with continuous sense. An example like, how long has she been seeing him, has a different meaning than the word see normally expresses. Normally see is a state that implies taking in visual stimuli into your eyes. Here we're talking about dating, right? Romantically dating someone. So in this case, it has an irregularity to it. That's why it's using. But in all other cases, using visual, we wouldn't say has been seeing. How long have you been seeing the screen? That doesn't make sense, right? So this does not mean seeing with your eyes. This means dating, right? So this is an irregularity. And there are a couple of other cases like that, but in that sense, they're not expressing the stative meaning. The stative meaning of see is to absorb visual information with your eyes, right? And because that's not a single action, that's a constant action, it doesn't need to be stretched out in the continuous form. It can't be. So it's one of those stative verbs. I wouldn't say, I am seeing you guys on screen. I would just say, I see you guys on screen, right? When you stretch it out and use continuous, the verb see, what you're talking about, what you're expressing is that you are dating someone, right? My IG is at the Grammar Detective. At the Grammar Detective. Please check my sport. My apport. I'm not sure what you mean, Guy. I'm not sure what that says. This is a good question, Jonas, but I think there's not much to investigate here grammatically. I don't know your language. First of all, I don't know. Well, you're in Morocco, so you're probably speaking Arabic, right? Maybe you speak French. I'm not sure. But if your language doesn't have some of these words in equivalence, I mean, I don't speak your language, so I can't really talk about the equivalence, to be honest with you. I'm sorry. What I would say is that people around the world are humans. We all feel the same things. We all have ideas in the same way. We love, we hate, we like, we dislike, we feel sad, we feel happy. We all share the same human feelings and a lot of similar experiences. We all eat, we all see, we all walk, right? There's a lot of commonality between humans. The differences are often just languages. Sometimes a language has one word for a meaning. German's great like this. German language has these incredible words that mean like a whole sentence in English. So we can't really talk about equivalence. That's one of the challenges of learning a new language, is learning how to say the certain meaning your language expresses. It takes time, right? But again, this is where the dictionary is helpful, not the computer translator. Because the computer translator, if there's no direct equivalent, it's going to give you a bunch of different options with words or phrases that may not really express the same meaning. So I recommend looking up the word in English in an English dictionary, not getting the Arabic, if that's your language, the Arabic meaning or the Arabic explanation. Get the English explanation in English words, because then you're learning the English idea, right? In other words, learn English in English. A lot of learners learn English through translation in their native language. That's okay for beginners, but at some point you have to start learning English with English. So look up the English dictionary for these words and try to understand the English meaning. And compare that to how a translator would explain the word. Okay, this is a common question we get on this show. It comes up a lot. The topic is related to gerunds and verbs and infinitives. It's a very confusing feature of English, I'm afraid. Oh, before I get to that, I'll just say hello to Maria. Oh, Maria, yes, Maria from Brazil, welcome. Okay, so we have a question here, looking forward to plus pronoun. Okay, this is related to prepositions too, which we talked about moments ago. Sorry guys, my whiteboard is a little bit wet here. I use a spray that's supposed to dry almost instantly. And you will have your subject and verb here. Okay. I'm looking forward to, and the two options are pronoun. Let's put a pronoun here. And let's put what's the other option? Gerund, yeah. Now, just a quick reminder, what is a gerund? A gerund is a verb with ing, right? Like singing, talking. But once you do that, it's no longer a verb. It becomes a noun, okay? Gerunds, I want you guys to think of, they are nouns, right? Here it's a verb, looking, because it's working together with the be verb. So this becomes the verb phrase. The whole thing. It's the predicate. It's the verb phrase. Gerunds are nouns. We use them in noun functions. They function as subjects or objects, right? Talking is nice. Swimming is hard. Swimming is the subject. It's a noun. So remember that. Gerunds are nouns. Now this expression, look forward to, it's a phrasal expression. It ends with a preposition. And as I said earlier, prepositions connect nouns. We need a noun after this. You have to look forward to something. I'm looking forward to something. Something is a noun. We have to look forward to nouns. Now, a pronoun like my name is Paul, that's a noun. He, that's a pronoun, right? We can use possessive pronouns like his, right? Her, that's a pronoun. You, right? These are pronouns, but pronouns are also nouns. They are pronouns, they're nouns. So they do the job of a noun. Looking forward to his presentation. Looking forward to her visit. Looking forward to you watching my show. All of those are noun phrases, right? So I'm still looking forward to something. Down here, what can we look forward to in gerund form? I look forward to talking. Every week I look forward to streaming. These are gerunds, but they're functioning as nouns. I look forward to, what else? Eating lunch. After the live stream, I'll eat my lunch. I'm looking forward to eating my lunch. Now again, we put gerunds here. We can put regular nouns here. I'm looking forward to the movie. I'm looking forward to, I don't know, I look forward to lunch. I'm looking forward to a pizza. Nouns. So whatever the case, guys, the summary is you look forward to something, and somethings are nouns. Something represents noun. You have to look forward to something. You have to look forward to noun. They can be a regular noun like pizza or lunch. They can be a gerund noun like talking, streaming, eating. They can be a pronoun, or they can be a pronoun plus a noun. But there's got to be a noun happening over there, right? So the question is, what's the difference? There is no difference. In either case, you're looking forward to something. Some things are nouns. Things are nouns. Something is a noun. You have to look forward to a noun form. What's a noun form? Pronouns are nouns. Gerunds are nouns. Regular nouns are nouns. Noun phrases are nouns. Like, I'm looking forward to a pizza in the park. Pizza in the park. That whole thing is a noun structure. There's no verb here, right? I'm looking forward to streaming the show next week. That's a noun phrase because all those words are nouns. So whatever you're looking forward to, it's got to be in noun form. Great question. Now, guys, it looks like I'm out of time. I just want to say hello to a few people here. I visited Vancouver in April and found some snow remained in parking lots. Really? I didn't see any snow in April. That's interesting. Where were you that you saw snow? Interesting. Yeah, so I'm out of time, guys, but I will take a note here and answer some of these questions next week. Is it so important to focus on different grammar and vocabularies that we be effective in speaking English? Well, that is a good question. How well do you want to speak English? Do you want to speak English like a native speaker child? Do you want to speak English like a native speaker teenager? Do you want to speak English like a native speaker adult, professional? How complex do you want to be able to communicate? Do you want to study medicine in Canada? Well, then you need really complicated grammar to talk about really complicated medical topics. So the answer to this question is related to you and what your goals are. If you just want to visit Canada and sightsee, you don't need a lot of English. Please, thank you, where is the restaurant? How can I find? Very simple English. It depends what your goal is. How effective? Well, you say here very effective. If you want to be very effective in speaking English, well, you have to practice speaking. You have to practice listening. You should practice reading and writing. You have to put all those things together. And eventually, you should understand the grammar you're using, right? And when I say that, I'm not talking about a bunch of grammar rules, right? When we do this work on the board, guys, I'm not giving you grammar rules. I'm showing you the architecture, the structure of how to express something, right? I'm looking forward to something. I'm excited about the future when this happens, when I see you, or when I swim, or when I eat my pizza. That's expressing the idea that I'm excited today, now, about this future. A pizza in the park after the show. I'm excited about that future. I'm looking forward to it. That's where my attention is. That's where my thoughts are in the future. Forward meaning into the future. So I could just say, I want pizza in the park. Or after the show, I will eat pizza in the park. Great. That doesn't express my excitement. That just tells you what will happen. So different grammar expresses different meanings. I'm always going to say this. So, how many different meanings do you want to effectively communicate? It's really up to you. Some teachers will tell you you don't need to learn grammar. They'll even tell you that native speakers never study grammar. That's not true. When I was a child, we studied grammar and then forgot about it and then just used the language. But we had grammar books, we had grammar lessons. Grammar is the structure of language. Remember how I started the show? I showed you an office tower and a bridge. Can you build an office tower using bridge engineering? Can you build a bridge using the architecture of an office? No. You need different architecture to produce different structures, different buildings, different engineering things. So, is grammar important? Yeah, absolutely it's important. Try learning a language without it. Try speaking a language with no grammar. It's not going to really work for you. You can imitate, right? You can imitate what someone says and you can repeat it, but that doesn't give you the control of meaning that you need, right? Especially to communicate complex ideas. Okay, objective and target, please. Okay, good. Well, we can say objective is a goal, right? An end result. Target is really related to weaponry, right? When you use a bow and arrow, you're aiming at a target. A target is something you're trying to hit, or when you shoot a weapon. So it's really related to the thing that gets hit. Whether you're hunting with a rifle and you shoot an animal, the animal is your target. The target of the weapon. So really, target is related to this idea of shooting for something. Now, we've used that metaphorically to talk about goals that you want to achieve, right? My target is a master's degree in engineering. Well, you're not trying to shoot it with your bow and arrow, but you're trying to achieve it. So it's your objective or your goal that you're trying to achieve, but sometimes this word target has been borrowed from weaponry because there's a similarity there, but it's metaphorical extension. Now, we can talk about metaphorical extension on another show. It's a big topic. Errands, yes. Okay, good. Yes, I'm still seeing and listening to you. Now, actually, you're not. You still see me. You see me because see is a state verb, right? It's not a single action. You see me and all the visual information comes in. Listening is different. Listening is not a state. Listening is when you apply mental attention to your ears. The equivalent in visual sense is you see everything, right? I see the computer screen, I see the camera, I see everything. But when I use my mind to focus my attention, I watch something, right? Seeing is the passive state of absorbing visual information. Watching is when you focus your attention on something specific, like watching a show, watching the camera, right? So hearing is similar to seeing. Hearing is the state of absorbing the information. Listening is when you use your brain to focus what you hear, right? Right now, I hear noise from outside in the garden. They're cleaning up the garden and cutting the grass and all that. I hear the noise, but I'm not listening to it. What I'm listening to is my voice. It's the only sound in here. I have to be careful not to speak too loudly because it might break the microphone, right? It might crack the sound. So I'm listening to the sound of my own voice. I'm paying attention to it. I'm applying my attention. And then it's no longer a state verb. It's an action. Listening is an action. Watching is an action. But seeing and hearing are state verbs. Okay, so guys, I'm going to have to say good night, good morning, or wherever you are, good day. And I see some more questions here. I will get to them next week, okay? So thank you very much for joining me at this hour, this new hour, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Fridays every week. So let's give this a try for the summer, okay? I know it's a little inconvenient for some of you. My dear friend Chris in Belgium, I'm sorry if it inconveniences you. I hope we can work that out. There's Chris. Yes, Oxford English Dictionary. Yeah. When you look up the dictionary, you see the spelling, you see the pronunciation in the phonetic alphabet, you see the meaning in the definition. They tell you what the word form is, noun, verb, adjective. They tell you if a verb is transitive or intransitive, right? There's a countable. If it's a noun, it'll be a countable or an uncountable signal. You can learn a lot about a word from the dictionary. So don't be afraid to use the dictionary. So that's great advice, Chris. Okay, I'm going to say goodbye now, guys. So thank you very much for joining today, wherever you are in the world. Just want to make sure. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. I'll see you next week at the same time, Friday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific. Convert that into whatever time zone you're in, okay? Until then, guys, please take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and stay cool. Thanks for watching tonight's show. If you have an English grammar question, an English mystery, contact me on social media and send me a video of you asking the question. I'll investigate it on a future show. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to get all the updates about videos and events. If you're feeling generous, you can also donate to the production costs of the show at Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. Finally, until the next time I see you on Hardboiled English Live, I want you to keep learning English. Stay healthy and stay cool.